Warning: this video will make you laugh. Let's have a good time with this collection this weekend. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for refusing to tell my husband the gender of our baby after he skipped going to the doctor appointment with me? My husband and I are expecting. This is our first baby and we're excited. Thing is, he barely attends any doctor appointments with me, and his excuses aren't even valid. He's willing to miss the doctor appointment over soccer or a drink or board game with friends. His response is always, "I'm not the one carrying the baby. Why do I have to go see the doctor with you?" Last week was my final straw. He was supposed to come with me for the baby's gender reveal appointment, but he chose to not come last minute because his friend invited him to a fish and chips meal. I was pretty livid, but didn't make a fuss about it. Mom went with me instead. He texted asking me to tell him the results, boy or girl, but I refused to tell him. He kept spam calling me, but I hung up each time. He came home fuming, demanding I tell him the results, but I refused and bluntly told him since he refused to attend the appointment, then he got no results till after the baby's born and said I was willing to perish on that hill. He went off calling me spiteful and immature for doing this and punishing him. He said he's the father and has the right to know. He then called me dramatic since I wasn't alone and Mom was with me. I said he gets no results, period. He's been fuming about it and told his family, and now they're pressuring me to stop playing mind games with him and tell him, but I declined. Am I the a-hole? Not really. If he said he was going to be there, despite earlier times when he's blown off appointments, if he said he was going to be there for it, and if he cared about this, what gender this baby is, he would have been there. Not really the a-hole. He's got to be part of this. It just feels like he is not a part of how this kid is being brought into this world, and I'm sure she's kind of questioning how this kid is going to be brought up, if he's going to just palm off all the raising of the kid duties onto the mom. Not really. I don't think so. What do you think? Story 1. After 10 years, I found out my daughter is not mine biologically. First off, I haven't used this throwaway account in 6 years. I'm surprised it's still active. Anyway, I got together with my wife about 15 years ago. She came with a pre-made family of a daughter and 2 boys. Then, in October of 2012, she got pregnant. We weren't trying to conceive, but weren't actively trying to prevent either. The date of conception seemingly matched up, and a beautiful baby girl was born August of 2013. I have been led to believe until this last Saturday that she was 100% mine, and I never questioned it. But over the weekend, I took our youngest son, stepson, but you all know I see him as mine, to a show choir event and met up with an old friend from around the time of my daughter's birth. A friend I met through my wife. This friend and I had a few drinks, and she said she needed to get something off her chest that she's been keeping secret for years, and told me everything. I was shocked, to say the least. The next day I called and confronted my wife, and initially she denied it, but admitted to having intimacy with the actual father. I hung up on her, and I had 3 hours to drive home with my son, all the while ignoring her calls. When I got home, she then pulled me aside away from the kids and confessed all. This little girl is my world, and I do not have any intention of turning my back on her. It's not her fault that this happened. But her mother now wants me to try to move past her indiscretion and stay together, stating what we have built since is strong, and I shouldn't tell my daughter about this as the real father had or has no intentions of being part of her life. I don't think I can forgive her for this. It's too big. I'm so angry right now at her and all her friends that knew but kept silent. I can't leave because I don't want her to state that I abandoned my family. I'm afraid that if I do keep this secret from my daughter, that she will one day find out and hate me for it. If I stay, I can't talk to anyone about it. They'll be confused and astounded that I stuck around, and it would make me feel like less of a man. I would bottle it up and let it eat me up and then rage quit my life. Update. My son was at his cousin's house for a sleepover after his event. I went out with my aunt and uncle, and the friend showed up at the pub we went to. When my aunt and uncle went home, I stayed to chat more. Update on 1/18/2023. I have a DNA test ordered. Wife is in search of alternate residence. She wants couples therapy. I considered shortly until more came to light. I commented a few times below that she had been sending likely bio-dad updates with school pictures. Also went to see him 5 years ago and took him to lunch. I got the results today from the paternity test. 0.0 paternal probability. Initially, when I found out from a supposed friend, I wanted to go nuclear. Ruin lives and the like. But after giving myself time to cool off, I decided that would only hurt the kids. I still see her as my daughter, but now I have much deeper waters to tread and how or when to talk to her about it. Wife and I will be divorcing peacefully. I won't give up my rights to sue either her or bio-dad. Wife did find my last post and spiraled down a rabbit hole reading the comments. It was interesting to see her reactions to the variety of thoughts you guys shared about her. Now it's time to move forward. Really, really tragic. Really a hard situation to be in. I think what's amazing about this story is just how focused he is on making sure the kids have a good life. He's mad about what the wife has done, but he really wants to be a part of these kids' life, and he seems like a really good father. I hope that he does still end up staying in their lives, because I believe he is really good for them. Story 2. Uncle bankrupts his previous employer. Not sure if this is petty or pro or whatever. You be the judge. My uncle is an Indian doctor. In the 90s, there was a massive doctor shortage in Australia, so the government gave him citizenship. Unfortunately, you still had to sit 3 expensive exams to work as a doctor in Australia. These exams cost thousands of dollars, only happened twice a year, had limited sitting spots and times, and had arbitrary pass-fail marks. So many Indian doctors ended up becoming taxi drivers or small businessmen, etc. My uncle decided instead he would reapply and go through Australian medical school. Sure enough, being a doctor for 10+ years makes medical school easy, and my uncle was top of his class. He decided since he was already pushing 40+ and had a family, he would apply to become a GP, family physician, instead of applying to be a surgeon like most of his teachers had suggested. At the time, many desperate foreign doctors were applying for GP residency. They would essentially get treated like dirt. They would be forced to work unpaid overtime. They would not be given proper study time or leave to sit mandatory exams. They would pocket the meals, accommodation, study, leave allowances that you were supposed to be paid by the training college. They would roster you to work every Saturday and Sunday shift, and if you refused, they would give you a bad review and your training would be jeopardized. This mostly happened to foreign doctors, as most of them would be in bad debt and highly desperate for any sort of work. When my uncle graduated, he applied for GP training in a practice that is located within an Indian ethnic enclave so that he would have access to religious food and schools, etc. for the kids. Sure enough, this practice engaged in all of the above frackery. My uncle would work every single Saturday shift. During his dedicated study time, he would have to come into work. He got reprimanded for not overcharging patients in line with their framework. Worst of all, when my aunt was really sick and hospitalized, they wouldn't give him any time off to look after her and the kids. The owner of the clinic was a white GP who was openly racist against Indians, Asians, and Aboriginal people, who were a large percentage of the clientele of this clinic. My uncle bided his 3 years, and as soon as his documentation came through, making him a GP, he quit that instant. He went down to the local bank and got a loan to open up his practice. All his old patients quickly moved with him to the new practice. The first year he struggled, but his practice quickly became known and word spread. Surprise, surprise, foreign-trained doctors actually work well and care about their patients if you actually care about them and give them appropriate wages and living conditions. More patients and more doctors looked to work with my uncle. Within 2 years, my uncle had a GP practice that had 4 doctors, 2 nurses, 2 trainees, and a manager. His practice easily rivaled his original teacher's. He then started 2 more GP practices with the money he was pulling in. These practices trapped his old teacher's clinic in a 2-kilometer triangle. He would advertise heavily and make sure he could take as much business from his old teacher as he could. Within 5 years, his old teacher's practice went from hiring 6 doctors, 4 nurses, and 6 trainees to just 1 doctor, his old teacher, and no one else. His old teacher tried to sell up his practice to other doctors, but no one would purchase it given how successful my uncle's 3 surrounding practices were. He then tried to sell it to my uncle, who refused to buy it even at a ridiculously low sale price. Instead, he waited for the bank to repossess his old teacher's clinic and then purchased it for a bit more money from the bank. My uncle then repurposed the building into his main offices from where he runs his other 3 practices. He made sure to redevelop his old boss's room into a staff toilet just as one final tribute to the human turd that was his old boss. Edit 1. Thanks for all the comments and the gold. I'm happy my uncle has brought happiness and justice to you all. He is such a generous guy in real life. I'm sure he'd be really happy if he knew what this site even was. As for a follow-up, he didn't even expand any further apart from those 3 clinics. I'm pretty sure the land value of the clinics is worth more than the doctor's business in them nowadays. Sorry if I didn't read your comment. There are so many discussions going on. For people asking if I had deleted it, I'm not sure why. Or if it is deleted, as I can still see it, was or is deleted or whatever. Thanks again, everyone. See you around. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for getting angry at mother-in-law when she refused to give me back my baby? My mother-in-law was holding my 6-month-old baby when I was having breakfast. I stood up and said, "I'll have her," and she said, "No, finish your coffee." I got a bit annoyed and said, "No, I will take my baby back," and reach for my baby. She giggled, pulled away, and said no. My husband was in the room too and was laughing as well. I got visibly angry and told her not to joke about this and give my baby back. I think it took another try or 2 when the mother-in-law was pulling away and keeping my baby. I was the only angry one, and mother-in-law and husband were laughing at me. When I got my baby, my husband took her away from me. I removed myself from the situation to calm down. My husband thinks I'm the a-hole for reacting like this. Am I the a-hole? What do we learn when we see nature documentaries and see creatures like lions and tigers and gorillas tending to their young? Don't get between a mother and their babies. They're dangerous to begin with, but don't do this as well. This is true for us. Not the a-hole. Mother wants her baby. Give her the baby. Story 2. Cops completely destroyed interior of my car looking for illicit substances, found nothing. I had purchased a used Cadillac a few months ago for a good price from a mechanic I knew. He said his son was driving it. When I first purchased it, I noticed a small container with what appeared to be trace amounts and scent reminiscent of BH oil, wax, shatter, dabs, whatever you want to call it. I threw it away and searched the car thoroughly to make sure there was nothing else in the vehicle. Flash forward to the other night, and I was pulled over for an improper lane change. Officer was nice enough, but said he thought he saw me making suspicious movements when I was being pulled over. He asked to search the vehicle, and at which point I said no. Waited half an hour for the dog to show up. He alerted my side driver and said at which point they had probable cause and they searched the vehicle. He checked all the normal spaces and they found nothing. At this point, they started to separate the bit of material from under the steering wheel and continued to trash the entire vehicle. They cut into the leather seats. They also cut into my spare tire. Mind you, I have no criminal background, and actually am in the process of working in law enforcement. They cut open just about everything in the car and searched everywhere and found nothing. I'm obviously growing increasingly agitated at this point, but the officer standing with me on the curb was anticipating this and ordered me to remain quiet and wait patiently. After this well over 2-hour ordeal, I was told I was free to go. When asking the officer if they were offering any restitution for the damages they caused, he simply told me to call the county. Before I do that, I would like to know if there's any better options and how I should pursue this. There's so many things dangling, they made the car look closer to what I probably would have paid for it. Not to mention, they also ruined my spare. Thank you. Couldn't the cops be held liable for endangering a motorist for causing direct damage to their spare tire? I mean, if this person is studying law enforcement, I think I know the specialty this person is going to study. Cops interacting with regular people, probably. I don't know what this guy's trajectory is going to be on his career, but I hope he's got some real perspective on it now. Story 1. I think my doctor boyfriend has been dosing me to make me forget things. This is in North Texas. Hey, so I must apologize if this post is jumbled a bit. I started typing it in Word yesterday before my date and forgot about it before finishing it today. I think my boyfriend has been secretly dosing me for a while now and is gaslighting me. I know this is going to be hard to explain, but I have been having gaps in memory that I have been explaining away as being tired or overworked or whatever else. I was going to ask my boyfriend about it since he's a doctor, but then I started to notice that this seems to happen when I go on dates with him. I know it must be crazy, but I've woken up with dried semen on my breast several times with no memory of the night before. I know it's him as, well, I won't get into specifics, but he likes that kind of thing more than other guys would. The first time it happened was when we were drinking, and I wrote it off as too much to drink. We got drunk and had spicy time all the time, so it's not a big deal to me. But then there were a few times when I know we were not drinking. I decided to break up with him over it, only to suddenly find myself on a date with him a few days later. I had not yet had the conversation to break up with him, but planned on it next time I talked with him. I remember being at the restaurant, but nothing before that. My car and his car were in the parking lot too, so I was confused. I decided to play along when he asked me to come back to his place. After 3 days at his place, I remembered everything, so I started to trust him again. Knowing he was an ENT, I know it won't be his forte, but he is a doctor. I was going to ask him about my issues when he randomly pointed to these red bumps on my thigh and said I should be treating those sores. I had completely forgotten they were there. These little red bumps that look like needle injections that got infected. I got so freaked out he mentioned them that I decided to leave. The next day he came over to check on me, and I remember waking up in bed with more dried semen on my chest. Then, today, he met me for lunch saying we had agreed to meet. I never agreed with him and would never want to. He does this all the time, saying we agreed to do something I have no memory of. I am sick and tired of it and want him punished. This has started to affect my work life as well, as I start to get paranoid when I see a boss walk into the room after making eye contact with me. I get paranoid that they're about to fire me. My friend also states that I've been acting strangely and out of character. I've even begun to lose sleep and sleepwalk when I do. Is there a way to have blood work done to see what kind of substance he's using on me? I do not want the police to blow me off and push me away as some crazy lady, so I want to be damn sure when I go to the police. That is just shocking. From a male perspective, I mean, I haven't had anything like this happen to me. It's probably a more common thing for women and the kind of fear that they have to face, which is horrifying. Definitely don't be alone, though. Have a friend hang out with you that you know you can trust to make sure everything is going all right. I would never be alone with this person ever again. Ever. Just make no contact whatsoever. Story 2. Restaurant employee amuses himself, delights me and my kids. Yesterday, I decided to take my kids to an international chain restaurant. In this restaurant, the kids' meal comes with ice cream, but you have to serve yourself. That was a problem because there weren't any bowls beside the ice cream machine. So I thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask an employee for some bowls. And that's just what I did. So he turns to look at the vast array of bowls behind him, some sauce-sized, some entree salad-sized, and many in between. And we realize that neither of us knows what size the kids' ice cream is intended to be. So he thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask a manager. And he says, Hey, boss, what do we put the kids' ice cream in? Without turning around, the boss says, A frackin' bowl. What do you think? Yeah, but what size bowl? The boss, with his inimitable charm, tact, and grace, says, Just fracking give him a bowl. The employee looked back at the bowls, and then I saw him get a big grin over his face. I apologize about that, sir. I think it's probably one of these, he says, as he hands me two of the largest bowls they have in the restaurant, practically giggling with glee. My children were similarly delighted. The manager walked by when we were halfway through and made a noise like a startled opossum, but said no actual words. Definitely going back there. You probably won't get that same size bowl, but yeah, the employee did everything to make sure he got everything right, and the boss told him what needed to be done. He has to make the decision, and he made it. I don't think the boss has any leg to stand on in any kind of repercussion. Just not. I'd try and get there again before it's too late, though, to see if the boss actually did make the rationalization or make the decision about what size bowl to use, finally. Try and get another one of those big ones in. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother he got what he deserved after pushing his girlfriend away for being a gold digger? My brother is a very hard-working man, and at 27, he's now very wealthy and doing well for himself. He's been with this girl for 6 months, and throughout the time we've gotten close because we both like hair, makeup, and shopping. I never knew there was anything wrong with their relationship, except when she texted me last week saying she would love to hang out, but thinks it'd be inappropriate because she and my brother broke up. I asked her why, and she said she was sick and tired of auditioning to prove she was with him for the right reasons. She went on to say that my brother is paranoid, she's after his money, so he would test her, like 1, leaving out his bank statements on their bed and getting upset when she picked it up, 2, going out to eat at high-end restaurants he requested and leaving his wallet at home on purpose to make her pay the bill and prove she's not going out with him for money, 3, never buying her gifts and questioning her when she asks why he doesn't. I was shocked, so I had to hear my brother's perspective. We spoke, and he told me everything she said was true, and that there's nothing wrong with making sure his girlfriend is with him for the right reasons. He said he left his bank statements on the bed and was peeking through the door to see if she would be curious, and when he saw her pick up the papers, he knew in his gut she was using it for his money, so he set up the restaurant idea to see if she would get upset after paying a $500 bill, which she was. I asked him if he thinks her being an elementary school teacher would have contributed to her being upset at a $500 bill at a restaurant he wanted to go to, and he said no. He said the straw that broke was when she asked him why he hasn't bought her a single gift since they've started dating, when she bought him a gaming console and new rims for his car, and he knew she was just discreetly asking him to buy her an expensive gift. He confronted her and said he thinks she's with him for his money, so she said, "Let me do us both a favor," and dumped him and blocked him. He's upset about the gold-digging shrew, and when I laughed, he called me an a-hole. He said I would never understand what it's like being rich and being used, and I get that concern. But I told him if he thinks any woman will be okay with his tests and auditions, he's delusional as hell. If he doesn't want to be used for his money, he should start dating people as wealthy as him and leave lower-income people alone if he's not going to be genuine in his relationships unless they pass his test. No, not the a-hole. This guy is just out of touch with regular people. He thinks she'll be okay paying $500 from being a teacher? I think he's really lost sight of how people who don't have as much money as him lives. And also, she complained about him not buying a gift. Not an expensive gift. A gift. And the gifts that she bought for him are way expensive. Definitely not the a-hole. Story 2. I followed and reported a drunk driver. Then I got a ticket for driving past curfew. Last week, I was driving home from my friend's house when I noticed someone driving very erratically. They were swerving when there was nothing to avoid, and they couldn't stay in their lane. So I called the police and followed them. The police caught up to us after a while, and they pulled over the driver. It turns out that he was extremely drunk, and when they gave him the sobriety tests, he failed them miserably. He was arrested, and the police asked me to write a statement and give them my information. I gave one of the cops my driver's license, I'm under 18, so he could copy my address, and he said that I wasn't allowed to be driving because it was past 11. I told him that I would have gotten home by 11, but I noticed the drunk driver and I didn't want someone to get hurt, so I followed them. Plus, when I called them, they asked me to keep following the man, even though it was technically past curfew. The officer said that it didn't matter, even if driving past curfew meant that World War III was prevented. That the law is the law, and that he had to give me a ticket because I broke curfew. He said he would have to give me another ticket if I drove home myself, so I called my parents and they came and picked me up and drove the car I was driving home. Am I really going to have to pay this ticket, or is there some way out? I'm thinking of calling the police station and asking them to reduce the fine, but at this point, I'm really anxious because I have to mail something back to the court in a few days, otherwise I'll get arrested and I don't know what to do. I'm in Pennsylvania, if it matters. I wonder if the police have to issue a ticket for this person that was also breaking the law because this person's testimony might be rendered illegal if the drunk driver tries to fight anything in court. And I don't know, maybe that's the thing behind it. But as much as this person is legally in the right to issue this person a ticket for driving past curfew, it's the cop being an a-hole here. They should have just kind of dropped it or just have some sort of compensation or reconciliation for this type of thing. He's helping them. And he was told to drive and keep following them. What was he supposed to do? Maybe that's an angle they can argue with in court. Story 3. I automated my ineffective boss's job. This happened a few years ago. I was a data and reporting analyst and did all the ad hoc reports for the company. My boss, we'll call her Carrie, was useless. She was one of those people that was always late, left early, and took days off at short notice. The only thing of value she did was all the regular reports, sales, revenue, etc. We suspected she got away with it because she was having an affair with her boss. We'll call him Stuart. Our CEO was a fairly decent bloke. He'd look for ways to cut costs and would pay regular bonuses for best cost-saving initiatives. Carrie was very keen to submit ideas and encouraged us all to automate our tasks so she could try and take the credit for the savings. On one of her skive days, which coincidentally Stuart was sick, as well as the CEO was desperate for the sales report my boss does, I said I'd give a look and see if I could get it done. Normally, she'd spend 2 to 3 days doing it each week, but the CEO wanted it that afternoon. A quick inspection of the data showed it would be quite easy to be automated, so I knocked up the necessary script and got it over to the CEO, who was super impressed that not only had I got it done in a couple of hours, but also that it could be updated whenever he needed it. He asked if I could also look at the revenue. I automated everything my boss did. Both Carrie and Stuart were back in the next day, but were immediately summoned to the CEO's office before being suspended and sent home. Turns out the CEO knew they were having an affair, and all the times they were sick or late and had to leave early was so they could sneak off and have spicy time. He'd not done anything about it because of how important these reports were. Now they were automated. He was able to get them suspended and later fired for gross misconduct for all the time they'd taken off. I also got a nice bonus out of it. Too long didn't read? My useless boss encouraged us to automate our work, so I automated all her tasks and the CEO fired her. Brilliant! I mean, the CEO was looking for an excuse to fire them, and this person just gave it to them. Normally, I'd say that companies don't really care about any of their employees, but it seems like this boss, for once, actually values good work. And this person delivered some good work and automated some tasks. Just don't automate yourself out of a job. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for boarding the plane and leaving without my wife? Sorry ahead of time for the length of this one, but there are a lot of key details I think are important. I know how this sounds, but hear me out. This is also not my usual account, but I don't want to risk my wife seeing this, as it's currently a sensitive subject. My wife, female 43, and I, male 47, have a daughter, female 21, who goes to college out of state. We will call my wife Meg and my daughter Jess. Jess is in her junior year of college. Over the summer, she was employed by her university and was able to stay in the dorms. After summer, she was moving out of the dorms and into her own apartment off campus. Meg and I live in the PNW. Jess goes to school on the East Coast. We usually go to visit Jess a couple of times throughout the semester, typically parents' weekend and move-out day. She also comes home during the holidays. Let me start by saying that traveling with my wife is not a great experience. I am very type A. I like to have everything organized and make sure that we get there when we need to be early, especially when traveling. My wife is the opposite, very go with the flow, and we will get there when we get there. I do my best to meet in the middle, but not when traveling by plane. Last year, during Parents' Weekend, Meg and I were going to fly out to see Jess. Our flight was at 10 a.m. Our airport isn't huge, but not a tiny airport either. I told my wife that we need to be at the airport 90 minutes early, and we live about 30 minutes from the airports. This being said, I wanted to leave at the very latest by 8, since we would also need to park and walk a little bit. I, of course, got up at 6 to make sure everything was ready and accounted for. My wife does not like to get up early. It took me attempting to wake her up 5 times before she eventually got up at 7:40, then wanted to make coffee, shower, and eat a bowl of cereal. Let's just say we didn't leave the house until 9. It ended up being busier at the airport than normal. likely due to many colleges having parents' weekends, and it took so long to get through security that we missed our flight. Rightly so. The airline refused to refund our ticket. We were able to get new tickets, but not until the next day, and missed Friday afternoon and Saturday morning with our daughter. Jess was disappointed, to say the least. Fast forward to now. We were flying down for a long weekend to help her move. We take one flight from our town to a bigger town nearby, then fly from there to my daughter's college town. Again, it was a long morning of me pushing my wife to get her to move along. Due to the last airport mishap, I wanted to make sure I told her we needed to leave extra early so as to not miss the flight again. We got there on time, with a bit of time to spare, and my wife was annoyed. Kept going on about how now we just have to sit and wait for 45 minutes for them to start boarding. We took our first flight and landed in the connecting city, at a much larger airport. We only had about 1 hour layover. We got off the plane at 9:15, and our next plane started boarding at 9:40. We had to take multiple rails to get from where we landed to our terminal. We got to our terminal and had about 15 minutes until our plane was set to board. My wife tells me that she wants to get coffee. There was a little market next to our terminal that sold hot food and coffee. I asked if she wanted me to go grab it for her. "No, I want Starbucks," she said. Well, Starbucks was a rail ride away and a little bit of a walk. I told her we couldn't do that. We didn't have enough time. She stated that we had enough time, and if I wouldn't go with her, she would go by herself. I tried to discourage her, but she was determined. She walked away, at a brisk pace for her, and said she would be back in time. 15 minutes went by, and she was nowhere to be seen. They started calling boarding groups. I called my wife, hoping she was nearby, but she didn't answer. They called a few groups, then called ours. In a panic, I called my wife again, 3 times. Finally, on the last call, she answered and said she was on her way. It was a long line and she had to wait a bit. I told her they were almost done with boarding and she needed to hurry up. I walked by the gate, but the attendant said they would need to shut the gate in 2 minutes. I waited by the gate. I waited and waited, but she didn't show up. The attendant asked if I wanted to board, otherwise she would have closed the gate. I tried to plead with her to wait a couple of minutes, but she insisted that she couldn't. So I boarded the plane. A few minutes later, my wife called me saying the attendant won't let her on. They had already removed the boarding ramp at that point. She told me I needed to tell them to let me off the plane to be with her, and I said no. It's not fair to do this again to Jess. I said, I told you we didn't have time, but you decided to go anyway. I told her to go purchase a new ticket for the next flight and I would see her when she arrives. She got to Jess's school and seemed unbothered by the whole situation and didn't even really talk about it. I thought maybe she realized it was her fault and just wanted to drop it. Boy, was I wrong. We are now home and she hasn't talked to me since the trip, over a week ago, and is insisting that I am an a-hole. So am I the a-hole? No. Yeah, you can have a we get there when we get there kind of attitude about a lot of stuff, and you can go with the flow, but you're dealing with the airport. You have to adjust to it. And going to get a certain kind of coffee, it just kind of feels kind of selfish. This is your daughter you're talking about. You've already disappointed for Parents' Weekend. Why would you do that again? I think there are some things that you do to make sure that you see your kids when you need to see your kids.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 2. Hold me back a year in high school over a single gym credit? How about I go to college a year early instead? I hated gym class. Not because of the physical activity. I was in hockey and football. But there wasn't enough time to shower before the bell. So you stink to high heaven for the rest of the day. So I would walk the track with all the girls. Ticked off my coaches something awful. So they flunk me in my junior year and won't let me double up my senior year so I would have to stay back. I had already picked out my college and was accepted, tech school. Just had to finish my senior year, so I figured I could work something out with the guidance counselor and the coach. Nope, neither would budge. Okay, I walk away thinking I'm boned and have to basically take one class my second senior year. Then it dawns on me. Can I just start going to college now? Are there other alternatives? So I called my college admissions and college guidance counselor, explained my situation and what other options are available. Since this is a non-traditional school, no SATs, you can start without a diploma. The caveat is you must have one or equivalent to get your diploma. The state I'm from, they don't distinguish between the two, so it won't be an issue later on. So I called another meeting hoping the high school admin would change their minds. No joy. They stuck to their guns. Thinking they had me cornered, I stood up and said, "Well, I'm just going to have to drop out then. I can't see missing a year of college to just do gym class." The coach thinks he's all cute and is, "You can't go to college without a diploma." I relay what the tech school admin and guidance told me of their policy on this. Faces dropped. It set into the guidance counselor that a dropout looks bad on her and the school, small school, when the state audits. She started backpedaling, and I wasn't hearing any of it. Later on that night, the principal and vice principal called to talk. I wasn't interested. I was all excited about starting classes in the fall. Too long didn't read. My high school tried to hold me back a year for one gym credit. I was already enrolled in a non-traditional tech college. Tech college would let me start classes as long as I got my GED prior to graduation. So I quit high school, looks bad on the school admin, and got my degree a year earlier. Yeah, way to go. Holding back on a gym credit. Gym. Holding back on gym. If it were anything else, like English, math, something like that, maybe your understanding on the situation, but not gym. No, that's good. Fight for your education, the one you want.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.